All right, so let's talk about the timeline of the primary immune response. And what I mean by primary immune response is the first time the body is infected with that pathogen. So it's never seen it before. This is its first exposure, the first time that a T or a B cell has ever been activated. So what happens? Here you can see this is showing cells of the innate and the adaptive immune system. You can see that the first cells really to respond are going to be the neutrophils, natural killer cells, and macrophages, all parts of the innate immune system. So that's why the innate immune system is so useful, because when you've never seen a pathogen before, it will come immediately and help defend the body from that pathogen, no matter what it is. Now, eventually you do get proliferation and activation of cytotoxic T cells, but look at the timeline here. To get a peak of those, it takes about 1 week. So if you've ever been sick before, you know that sometimes it does take you a week or longer to actually feel better. Now look at the plasma cells. Those are the active antibody-secreting B cells. Those take almost 2 weeks to reach their peak. And the antibodies that they produce don't get significantly elevated in the blood until almost 2 or even 3 weeks out. So it takes a long time for your adaptive immunity to actually have an effect the first time you see a pathogen. So how does that change during a secondary exposure? So here's the primary response. This is just showing adaptive immunity with B cells. So first exposure takes forever. You get your primary response after a couple weeks, and it's small. Now look at the second exposure. Second exposure, the response time is hours to days, and the response is much, much larger. And the reason for that are these memory B cells. And this is also the reason that we take vaccines. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in lecture talking about vaccines, because I have a activity this week on vaccines where I'm going to have a little mini lecture describing the activity, where I will describe how vaccines work. But essentially, vaccines sort of take use of this fact that if you can just bypass this slow primary response and head straight to the secondary response, you basically can not have to go through that initial, this part of sickness. So you essentially take a dead or attenuated fragment of a pathogen and inject it into an individual. They don't get sick, but it does elicit a primary immune response that's large enough to give you this secondary response when you do actually get infected by the pathogen for the first time. And so that's why vaccines are so amazing.